Welcome back to Channel 4 Wrestling News. I'm your host, Ian, and by the end of this video, you will be completely up to date with everything that is making headlines in the world of pro wrestling. But we are going to start in Japan. We are going to start in Fukuoka for Wrestling Dontagu, Night 1 from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Night 2 is actually ongoing right now as I speak, though some changes have been made. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Night 1 of Wrestling Dontagu featured 3 singles matches, all involving members of Bullet Club, and all 3 matches carried significant stipulations, ramifications to whoever won or lost the match. And we'll start things off with Zack Sabre Jr. versus Tonga Loa. Now, the stipulation in this match was that if Zack Sabre Jr. can defeat Tonga Loa, then Dangerous Tekkers, his tag team along with Taichi, will earn another shot at the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Championships. Now, Dangerous Tekkers are the former champions, but they lost those titles to Tonga Loa and Tama Tonga at Wrestle Kingdom. They then had a rematch for those titles at the New Beginning in Hiroshima, but lost via DQ. So now, if Zack Sabre Jr. can defeat Tonga Loa, they get another title shot, possibly at Wrestle Grand Slam in the Tokyo Dome later this month, although that wasn't announced beforehand, hasn't been announced now. But these two go to about 15 minutes, and it's exactly what you think it would be. It's a lot of Zack Sabre Jr. using his technical prowess. He's using his technical ability as a wrestler, doing a lot of unique pinning combinations, unique submission holds. But then Tonga Loa, not to be outdone, although he was outdone, he demonstrated some of his submission holds. He had a crossface in there at some point. He did some technical wrestling along with Zack Sabre Jr., but for the most part, he used his power moves, power slam, power bomb, big suplexes, things like that. Then the finish of the match came. It looked like Tonga Loa had the match in his control. He's going for his apeshit finisher, and Zack Sabre Jr. counters out of it into a crucifix pin. He pins Tonga Loa, and just like that, we've got another Dangerous Tekkers versus Gorillas of Destiny match on the horizon. We go to the next match, and we've got Tama Tonga, a favorite of the channel, of the subscribers to this channel. He's taking on Taichi in what I believe was just the second ever ladder match in New Japan Pro Wrestling history. The first having been Kenny Omega against Michael Elgin for, I think that was the Intercontinental title, might have been the United States Championship. But anyway, Kenny Omega, Michael Elgin were the first ladder match. And then this here, we've got the second ladder match. Now, while this was Tama Tonga versus Taichi, it was really a 6-man match. Like, everybody got involved in this match. There was numerous incidents of interference. There was just a lot going on. So the ladder match, they've got the iron fingers placed in like a clear plastic bag. And the goal is you go up the ladder, and it's whoever grabs the iron fingers. It's not one of those things where if you grab the iron fingers, then you're allowed to use it. If you grab the iron fingers, you win. Early on in the match, we had it determined that the small ladders weren't big enough for someone to climb up and actually reach in the bag and grab the iron fingers. So they had to use the bigger ladders later. So they start out brawling, but then they are very early on, they go to the outside and start dueling ladders and things like that. So on the outside, you've got Jado, you've got Dookie. They're both interfering quite a bit. Then as the match goes on, Zack Sabre Jr. comes out. He interferes. This was after Jado had tried to use electrical tape to tape Taichi to the barricade on the outside. Eventually, Tonga Loa comes to fight off Zack Sabre Jr. Tonga Loa is able to give Zack Sabre Jr. the apeshit move that he wasn't able to do in their singles match just moments before. He's able to do that. Finally, eventually, after all the interfering parties are removed from the ring, we get down to Tama Tonga and Taichi once again. They've got a ladder set up. They've got a table underneath the ladder. And you know we're going to get some type of big spot. They're climbing the ladders. They're fighting on the ladder. Tonga grabs a hold of Taichi. It looks like he's going to give him a cutter through the ladder. But as he goes to do it, Taichi shoves him off. Tonga goes just crashing perfectly through the table. And when the camera catches up with Tama Tonga, he's just dead. He's completely out of it. And Taichi is able to climb up the ladder, reach into the clear plastic bag, and pull out the iron fingers and win the match. So Dangerous Techers, a clean sweep. They won both matches against the Gorillas of Destiny here. So now the deck is looking pretty stacked against the tag champs. So not only did you have the Dangerous Techers earn another tag team title match against the Gorillas of Destiny, now Taichi's got the iron fingers. The deck is stacked. The deck is really stacked against the Gorillas of Destiny now. But, I mean, you know, we'll see. Just because the deck is stacked against the Gorillas of Destiny does not mean that they won't come away from what I'm assuming will be Wrestle Grand Slam. I mean, it just makes sense that you would have this match in the Tokyo Dome at the end of the month. I'm assuming that's where it's going to be. But then after that, Bullet Club had its third match, Jay White challenging for the Never Openweight Championship against Hiroshi Tanahashi. Bullet Club does not want to go 0-3. Jay White wants to become a Grand Slam champion, having won all the friggin' belts, which he has. He's won everything, basically, that's been available to him. So this match went nearly 40 minutes, and it basically came down to both guys trying to destroy the knees of the other guy. I couldn't even count how many dragon screw leg whips took place in this match. Like, if you go back and watch a Young Bucks match from 2013, there are as many super kicks in that match as there were dragon screw leg whips in this match. It was just everybody trying to destroy everybody else's knees, with the idea being that Jay White wanted to make Tanahashi tap out. He's got that Tanahashi tap out sort of reverse figure four kind of move. And that's sort of what the end of the match really played into that. He had locked Tanahashi in that hold for a very long time, twice, I believe, maybe even more than that, really wearing down on Tanahashi's knees. But Tanahashi won't quit. He won't give up. He'll keep crawling. He'll reach out to those ropes. Then the finish of the match, after all of this, each guy trying to ruin the knees of the other guy. Like, the whole match was each guy trying to build to a submission of the other guy. So then Tanahashi's got Jay White in a hold, and Jay White's reaching out for the ropes, and he's reaching out for the ropes, and Tanahashi is only concentrating on the fact that Jay White is reaching out for the ropes, and because Tanahashi was only concentrating on Jay White reaching out for the ropes, Jay White is able to grab a hold of Tanahashi's head, give him his flatliner finish, the switchblade, and he pinned him. After the match, White issued the challenge to David Finlay, who had a great performance in the New Japan Cup. Jay White issuing the challenge to David Finlay for a match. Hey, maybe we'll get that at Wrestle Grand Slam as well. So Jay White coming out of the main event of Wrestling Dontaku Night 1 with the victory, and he avoids the clean sweep for Bullet Club. They pick up one win out of 3 big matches on the show. Now, for most people listening to this, actually all people listening to this, except for me listening to me right now, Wrestling Dontaku Night 2 has already taken place. But it's not going to be the same card that was originally announced, as early this morning, it was revealed that 6 wrestlers on the New Japan Pro Wrestling roster are off the show due to COVID-19 protocols. That includes Kazuchika Okada, Minoru Suzuki, El Desperado, and Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Sho and Yo are all removed from tonight's card. So that eliminates the Junior Heavyweight Championship match. That's just not going to take place. So really, more than anything, a big one-match show, Night 2 of Wrestling Dontaku Night 2. But it's a pretty big match. You've got Will Ospreay defending the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship for the first time, and he's going to be doing that up against Shingo Takagi. That's going to be a great match. Sticking with New Japan Pro Wrestling at the moment, there was a very interesting interview up with the president of the company on NJPW1972.com. And during this interview, he speaks to what the company's current position is on talent sharing, on wrestlers going through the forbidden door, as it has been called before. And we've seen this with New Japan Pro Wrestling during this pandemic era, if you, well, I guess it makes sense to call this the pandemic era, but we've seen this from New Japan Pro Wrestling recently. We've seen Kenta show up on AEW Dynamite and build up a match between him and Jon Moxley that took place on New Japan Strong. Similarly, Yuji Nagata and Jon Moxley are now going to have a match for the IWGP United States Championship on the May 12th edition of Dynamite. And in the build-up to that, they're both going to be in tag team action this week on New Japan Strong. So something has been worked out between AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling where they are allowing wrestlers from one company to appear on the show from the other that takes place in the United States. So the Los Angeles Dojo for New Japan Pro Wrestling, Daly's Place in Jacksonville for AEW. Similarly, we're seeing wrestlers from New Japan Pro Wrestling now show up in Impact Wrestling, the most notable of those being Juice Robinson and David Finlay, who are now the Impact Tag Team Champions. We even saw Finlay and Robinson bring the Impact Wrestling Tag Team titles on a tour in Japan with them. We might even see David Finlay walk out to the ring in the Tokyo Dome for his match against Jay White, assuming that takes place then, wearing an Impact Tag Team title belt. Also, El Phantasmo, the two-time winner of the Super J Cup, he's been announced as going to Impact Wrestling soon. And all the while this is happening, there's like no one in Ring of Honor. So what's going on with New Japan Pro Wrestling's relationship with Ring of Honor? This was kind of explained a little bit in the president's statements. He said, basically, it is our job to support a wrestler if they want to go wrestle somewhere else. We want to make it be the most successful it can be. That's our guy. He's going somewhere else. We'll have people from elsewhere on our show as well. So New Japan Pro Wrestling at this moment seems incredibly open to this forbidden door type situation. Will that stay the same after the pandemic? I mean, nobody can know that right now. It makes sense for companies right now. Will New Japan Pro Wrestling want to tour the United States again? And at that point, does it then stop making sense for them to be loaning out Juice Robinson to another American company or having some of their popular in America wrestlers showing up on AEW Dynamite? Not sure. I guess we'll find out when the pandemic's over. But for right now, there appears to be this complete 180 from one regime to the next in New Japan Pro Wrestling in terms of how they deal with talent sharing with other companies. And I think that's a good thing for wrestling. I think it's a good thing for wrestling when all promotions, aside from WWE, are able to freshen up their roster really easily and create interesting matchups that fans want to see. So we'll just see how this continues as things start to open up again a bit. Now, also as it concerns the quote-unquote forbidden door in wrestling, the forbidden door was flapping away between Mexico and the United States as well recently. So Mexico has a lot of things going on with its wrestling at the moment. So you've got Roosh and these guys with this new promotion that just started. They just had a press conference. They haven't ran any events yet, but AEW stars like Ty Conti, the Lucha Bros, they are going to be on this show. Seems pretty exciting. They're going to be doing a pay-per-view later in the summer. However, Rey de Reyes, which is a big event for AAA Lucha Libre in Mexico, they had that this weekend, and a lot of what they did was building up angles for Triple Mania. Now, Triple Mania, I guess we'll likely get it at the normal time again this year, later in the summer. But no date has actually been announced for the show as of yet, but some big angles took place. The biggest of which, well, I mean, arguably, Andrade appears on he wasn't at the show, but appeared via video, and he challenged Kenny Omega for the AAA Mega Championship. Andrade versus Kenny Omega. If that's your main event for Triple Mania, that's a pretty big main event. Andrade, returning to Mexico. Well, I guess he would have returned by then already. But Andrade versus Kenny Omega is a very, very big match. And it's a very important match as it concerns Kenny Omega's belt collector status. I mean, if he loses this title to Andrade, that's a pretty big blow to his belt collector status. Because right now, he's the AEW World Champion. He's the Impact World Champion, and he's the AAA Mega Championship. You can definitely argue, and you'd be right, that the AAA Mega Championship is a bigger deal, certainly internationally, than Impact's title. I mean, AAA is a huge promotion in Mexico, and Impact, as much as we like Impact here, it is a second-tier promotion in comparison to the bigger promotions in the United States. So losing that Mega Championship would be a big blow for Kenny Omega. But on the other hand, beating Andrade in Mexico at Triple Mania would be a huge victory for Kenny Omega. That wasn't the only angle that was shot at Rey de Reyes, however. Deonna Purrazzo, the Impact Knockouts champion, so Impact is sending everybody through forbidden doors across the globe. She's there on commentary. Now, the old Reina de Reinas champion was Taya Valkyrie? It was either Taya Valkyrie or Tessa Blanchard. Regardless, neither of them are there anymore, so they had to declare a new champion. Fabi Apache wins the match to be declared the new champion. Deonna Purrazzo challenges and then attacks her. So now we have a Knockouts title versus AAA Reina de Reinas championship match, like title for title, between Fabi Apache and Deonna Purrazzo at Triple Mania. That's a big deal for Impact. Right? That's a high-profile match to get Deonna Purrazzo out there, too. So now in, your two biggest matches in Triple Mania, you've got champions from Impact. You can't say Don Callis is not hustling to get exposure for his company. Don Callis is hustling to get exposure for his company. He's got his belts, tag team titles on guys that are going to have high-profile matches in the Tokyo Dome. He's got his belts on people who are going to have high-profile matches at Triple Mania. Don Callis is hustling to get his promotion, more eyes on his product. Also, Sam Adonis, the brother of Corey Graves, who's done a kind of a pro-Trumper gimmick in the past, he's now leading a faction in AAA that is very much alluding to their previous ties with CMLL and then playing up that big rivalry between CMLL and Triple A. So a lot of stuff going on in AAA right now, building up to Triple Mania later this summer. So possibly the biggest long shot as it concerns wrestling's forbidden door right now is the idea that WWE would be involved in this in any way. It doesn't seem likely, does it? But Daniel Bryan has been doing interviews where he's been saying that's exactly what he's trying to get going. He's talked about how his contract is coming up. I don't think it's coming up very, very soon, but his contract is coming up at some point. And he's talked about trying to convince WWE to let him wrestle for other promotions in addition to WWE. Now, when you hear that, and of course your first thought is, there's no way WWE is ever going to do that. That's ridiculous. Not going to happen. Fast forward to SmackDown this week, and Daniel Bryan is facing Roman Reigns in a singles match for the Universal Championship. However, there's the stipulation that if Daniel Bryan loses, he must leave SmackDown forever. Now, in WWE, this means nothing. It means Daniel Bryan might leave SmackDown for a few weeks, a few months. We might forget about it immediately. It doesn't really matter. Roman Reigns beats Daniel Bryan. He chokes him out in a guillotine. He's submitted. Daniel Bryan's been moved to the alumni section on the WWE website. So in storyline now, the guy who is saying, I want to go wrestle for other promotions is gone from WWE. Is this opening the door for him to do a couple matches with another promotion? Likely not, but maybe, probably not, but maybe. Daniel Bryan did this interview and he talked about how wrestlers in WWE don't get the respect that they maybe should from sort of hardcore wrestling fans who like New Japan and promotions that are more wrestling centric as opposed to sports entertainment centric. But Daniel Bryan was saying, look, if you put Cesaro in New Japan Pro Wrestling, he's gonna impress everybody. So I almost wonder if Daniel Bryan's pitch to WWE backstage is, look, let me go be Bryan Danielson in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Let me go be Bryan Danielson on AEW even. I doubt they're going to allow that. But maybe Daniel Bryan is pitching it. Let me show that I'm still the best wrestler in the world. And then I come back to WWE, and sure enough, Vince McMahon will just have him lose 20 matches in a row, so it sends the message that WWE wrestlers are better. But I think it's worth pointing out that this could possibly happen. Triple H has said that WWE is open for business as it concerns the Forbidden Door, whatever. Roman Reigns referenced the Forbidden Door in a promo that he cut on social media to Daniel Bryan after beating him. So I certainly wouldn't bank on the idea that this is going to happen, but it could happen. Maybe. Probably not, but maybe. Just before we end this video, I want to run down the lineups for NXT tonight on Tuesday, and then AEW Dynamite, a very special Blood and Guts episode of AEW Dynamite for tomorrow, May 5th. So on NXT tonight, we've got Finn Balor's return is being promoted. We've got a Falls Count Anywhere match as the rivalry between Isaiah Scott and Leon Ruff continues. Then we've got an important match in terms of rankings in the men's tag team division as Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa will take on the Grizzled Young Veterans. And then in a NXT Women's Tag Team Championship match, it's going to be a street fight as the champions Ember Moon and Shotzi Blackheart defend against the Ways, Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. But poor Indy Hartwell might be too heartbroken to perform well in this match. So, fairly standard episode of NXT this week, but then as we go to AEW Dynamite, a very, very big episode of AEW Dynamite. It's a match that we first got announced a year ago, but then the pandemic sort of hampered everything. But we're going to get it now. The Blood and Guts match, a War Games style match, although Chris Jericho did an interview and said, look, this is AEW's take on a War Games. There's going to be some differences. We don't necessarily know what those differences are just yet, but he had said that it's something to do with the dimensions of Daly's place that is causing something about Blood and Guts to be a little bit different from War Games. So we'll see. We'll see what it is, but it's Chris Jericho and his Inner Circle against Maxwell Jacob Friedman and the Pinnacle. And this is a very important match for both stables. Both factions really need a win here because the Inner Circle just turned babyface. Chris Jericho just turned babyface. They just got back together. Sammy Guevara just rejoined the group. It'd be a hard time for them to take a really harsh loss in a match as important as this one. On the other hand, the Pinnacle just formed. They just became a group. This is Maxwell Jacob Friedman's first time leading a faction in AEW. It seems like it would be a hard thing for them to lose their first big match as a unit. So when you look at this, there's a lot on the line for both stables. Now, MJF has a singles victory over Chris Jericho. Remember, that was, they had a singles match while they were still technically both in the Inner Circle. So MJF already has a victory over Chris Jericho. So in some ways, he's already leading this feud with Jericho. So Jericho and the Inner Circle really need a win for that reason as well. But the Pinnacle, this is their first match. You need a win in your first match. So, who's going to win? I don't know. There's a lot on the line for both teams. But they announced a bunch of other matches in the build-up to Blood and Guts. There had been rumors that it might be a one-match show, but they announced 4 other matches, so that's definitely not the case. So Cody Rhodes is going to be taking on QT Marshall, and that's a match that you might have thought we wouldn't be getting till Double or Nothing later in the month. They're going to have a singles match here on Dynamite. It's a special branded episode of Dynamite, obviously, so they're not just throwing it away. So Cody versus QT Marshall. Then we got Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley. They're going to team up and take on Kenny Omega and Michael Nakazawa. So that's another big rivalry as well when you consider how far this Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston rivalry is going. Also, we still don't know who's going to challenge Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing for the title. Is it going to be Jon Moxley again? He already beat Moxley for the title and then successfully defended the title against him in the Exploding Barbed Wire Death Match. So it seems like it won't be Jon Moxley getting the next title shot. Hangman Page had been ranked number 1 for the longest time. However, he lost to Brian Cage last week, so that'll probably boot him out of the number 1 ranking position. You've then got Orange Cassidy, who had been ranked number 2, and then he was victorious last week while Hangman Page lost. So Orange Cassidy could very well be ranked number 1 when the rankings come out tomorrow. Could Orange Cassidy versus Kenny Omega be the main event of Double or Nothing? It's possible. On the other hand, if one of Eddie Kingston or Jon Moxley gets the pin for their team at Blood and Guts against Omega and Nakazawa, especially if Kingston or Moxley pins Omega, then they could find themselves in line for a title shot as well. So we still don't know. I think if Moxley and Kingston win this match against Omega and Nakazawa, whoever gets the pinfall for their team might get the title shot against Omega, or it might end up going to Orange Cassidy, or we might have some other challenger come out of the woodwork between now and then. It's not really clear. Dr. Britt Baker is going to be in action. Her opponent has yet to be named. And then also we have a number 1 contendership match for the AEW tag team titles as the Acclaimed will face the Varsity Blondes versus SCU versus the Jurassic Express. And so the winning team there will then go on to face the Young Bucks for the tag team championships. And that's your lineup for this week's Blood and Guts. All right, that's it, everyone. You are up to date on all the important things that are making headlines in the world of pro wrestling. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, click the notifications bell so you don't miss out on any more news or reports. I'm Ian, reporting for Channel 4 Wrestling News.